Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, so have you ever been hanging out with older relatives and you inevitably hear them say something like, "Man, everything is so expensive now," or "Back in my day, a candy bar was literally 50 cents." It's a total classic, right? Right up there with complaining about the weather or, their lower back. But actually, if we look past the nostalgia for a second, they're pointing out a really real, incredibly powerful force. I mean, just think about your own life. Have you noticed that the exact same amount of cash in your wallet somehow buys way less stuff than it did just a few years ago? Fewer snacks, smaller portions? It is definitely not just your imagination. This invisible force is acting on your wallet right now. It impacts the price of the food we eat, the rent you're going to pay, the video games you buy, your phone, and even what your future salary will actually be worth in the real world. The stakes are absolutely huge here, and to protect your financial future, you really need to understand exactly what's going on. Okay, let's dive into this. Just imagine you've got a crisp $10 bill. Last year, that $10 easily got you a full meal, like a burger, fries, and a drink, the whole shebang. But this year, you take that exact same $10 bill to the exact same restaurant, and it only gets you the burger and the fries. The drink is just gone. You haven't lost any money, but the exact same cash suddenly buys less food. And that phenomenon, my friends, is called inflation. So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're looking at 1. What is inflation? 2. Why do prices go up? 3. The good, the bad, and the extreme forms. 4. Who actually controls it? And 5. How it directly affects you. Let's get into it without the confusing jargon. Section 1. What is inflation? Basically, the gradual increase of prices. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole picture. Think of it kind of like time travel. Back in 2010, a movie ticket might have cost you, say, $8. Today, walking into that exact same theater for a standard movie could easily run you $15. That price jump from $8 to $15 didn't just happen by magic. Notice how the entire life cycle of inflation is broken down into 3 main areas. You've got the causes, which include things like demand and production costs, the effects, specifically how your savings take a hit, and the mitigation, showing how governments and banks actually step in to try and cool things down. Now, thinking about those effects, a massive one is the idea of a shrinking wallet. That perfectly represents a critical concept called purchasing power. This is basically the formal definition for what we saw with the burger and fries a minute ago. When your money loses its value over time, it means the purchasing power of your cash is literally shrinking. You haven't done anything wrong, you haven't dropped any cash out of your pocket, but your hard-earned money physically commands fewer goods and services in the real world. Which brings us to section 2. Why do prices go up? Let's look at the forces behind the rising costs. Because, why can't things just stay the same price forever? Well, economics is all about moving parts, and there are specific, measurable forces driving these costs up. The first major force is called demand pull inflation. To translate that big academic term into plain English, it happens when way too many people want to buy something, but there simply isn't enough supply to go around. So when demand pulls ahead of supply, the price gets pulled up right along with it. Let's make this totally relatable. Imagine your school cafeteria makes the absolute best pizza, but today they only have 20 slices available. Suddenly, there's this massive rush, and 100 students all want that pizza. Too many students, not enough pizza. Because the demand is so wildly high compared to the limited supply, the cafeteria can easily raise their prices, and people are still going to line up and pay for it. That sudden surge in demand outstripping supply, that is demand pull inflation in action. Then we have the second major force, which is called cost push inflation. This one happens on the manufacturer side. When businesses have to spend more money just to produce their goods, they don't usually just, eat that loss. If they just absorbed those costs, they'd go out of business entirely. So, instead, they push those increased costs onto you, the final customer, in the form of a higher price tag. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it plays out in the real world. Imagine a sneaker company. Out of nowhere, the cost to ship boxes internationally goes up. On top of that, the workers making the shoes need higher wages, and the raw materials, like the rubber and leather, become way more expensive. The company is now spending significantly more just to make a single pair of sneakers. So to survive, they absolutely have to raise the price of the shoes on the shelf. Their rising production costs literally push the final price up. And there's one more major cause we have to talk about. Imagine if, tomorrow, a teacher walked into your classroom and handed every single student a crisp $100 bill. Sounds completely awesome, right? Everyone suddenly has more money. But what happens at lunch? Everyone rushes to buy more snacks.
demand skyrockets overnight. When there is too much money flowing in the system, all chasing the exact same amount of products, prices naturally rise to balance it out. This is exactly what happens when a country prints too much money too quickly.
Moving on to Section 3, good, bad, and extreme, because not all inflation is created equal. You might be thinking inflation is this terrible villain that must be stopped at all costs, but actually, a tiny, predictable bit of inflation is a sign of a healthy, growing economy. It usually means businesses are expanding, people are buying things, and wages are going up. But here is the breaking point. It turns from a sign of health into a toxic economic problem when prices rise faster than people's income. If your grocery bill and your rent shoot up by 10%, but your paycheck stays exactly the same, your daily life suddenly becomes much, much harder.
And if things completely break down, we hit something called hyperinflation. This is the extreme danger zone. Imagine a loaf of bread costs $2 today. Next month, it shoots up to $10. A few months later, it's $30. Think of historical examples like Zimbabwe or post-World War I Germany. The price of everyday staples spirals out of control so rapidly that money literally loses its value almost daily. It's incredibly destructive to a country, and it's exactly what governments try very, very hard to avoid.
But, sometimes companies don't want to shock you with a higher price tag, so they use a much sneakier tactic called shrinkflation. It's almost like an insider secret. This is when, instead of raising the actual price, companies quietly shrink the physical size of the product you're buying. You're still paying the exact same amount at the cash register, but suddenly there's noticeably more air in your bag of chips, or your favorite chocolate bar is mysteriously smaller. So the crucial point is understanding the difference between these two strategies companies use to deal with their own rising costs. With normal inflation, you pay a higher price, but you get the same size product. With shrinkflation, you pay the same price, but you get a smaller size product. Either way, your purchasing power takes a hit. You're getting less for your money. It really just depends on whether the company decides to alter the price tag or sneakily alter the packaging.
Section 4. Who controls the inflation? How do we actually turn down the economic heat?
If inflation gets way too high and things start getting too expensive, who actually steps in to fix the mess? Well, that job belongs to the central banks. In many countries, there's a major institution dedicated entirely to keeping the economy stable. For example, in Canada, it's the Bank of Canada. In the United States, it's the Federal Reserve. Their primary goal is to carefully manage inflation so it stays at that low, healthy level without spiraling completely out of control.
And here is exactly how they cool things down, step by step. Step 1, the central bank raises interest rates. Step 2, this makes borrowing money from a bank much more expensive for regular people and businesses. Step 3, because borrowing is so expensive, people spend less money and take out fewer loans. And finally, step 4, with less spending and less demand in the economy overall, prices stop rising so fast. It's literally like turning down the thermostat on an economy that's running way too hot. Which brings us to Section 5, how it affects you, why your $20 allowance suddenly feels smaller.
Let's bring all this macroeconomic theory right back down to your personal life. If you get a fixed $20 allowance for years while prices rise, that allowance feels smaller and smaller. You're earning the same, but paying more. It's incredibly frustrating, right? And this isn't just about snacks. Understanding inflation is absolutely vital for your future survival. As you look ahead, inflation directly impacts how much you're going to need to borrow for college costs, what you can expect to pay for rent or a car, and how much it'll cost just to keep food in the fridge. Most importantly, it dictates your salary expectations. If you don't negotiate a salary that rises with inflation, you are technically taking a pay cut every single year. No way you want that.
So, if you take away just one golden rule from this entire explainer, let it be this. Inflation equals same money, less stuff. That is the absolute simplest takeaway and the core principle of understanding how prices rise over time. Same money, less stuff.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Knowing what you know now, that cash sitting under your mattress is quietly losing its purchasing power every single day, how will this change the way you save, spend, and plan for your future? Really think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep asking the right questions about your money.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you in the next one.
If you're curious how I create these videos, from AI voiceovers to video editing and research, you'll find my complete toolkit in the description.